All right. Welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon. We're going to wait just a little bit here as all of the people dial into the webinar. One of my favorite things to talk about, well, CMMC is obviously one of my favorite things to talk about, but specifically incident response planning. So, all right, let's go ahead then and a little bit of housekeeping before we roll. If you have a question, please do use the Q&A section. It's difficult sometimes if people post in chat and they also post in QA for us to make sure that we are answering all the questions or looking at all the comments. So if you just have a comment that you'd like to share, you can definitely put that in chat. If you have a specific question that you want us to answer, please do put that in QA. You can post questions in QA throughout. If it's relevant to exactly what we're talking about, I'll probably stop and answer it just to make sure. We've also have my lovely assistant, Sarah, on the line today, who will help in identifying those questions as they pop up and make sure that they all get answered for you. All right. And says hello. All right. All righty. So let's get rolling. All right. So what are we going to cover today? The first thing we're going to cover is the requirement for incident response plan in CMMC, because let's go ahead and start at the beginning and frame up why you're even on this call today. We're also going to talk about the key elements of an incident response plan. And we're going to together, we're going to modify the template for the incident response plan for a CMMC client while we're all on the call. You should have received an email from me with the actual template from the CMMC IT Documentation Toolkit. If you haven't, check your spam filter and check your junk. And if you've done those two things and you cannot find this document, then please email Sarah and she will shoot that over to you. And to Sarah, if you could put your email in the chat, and please email Sarah, or yes, just email her, because that'll be easier. She could just reply back to you and make sure that you have a copy of this. We won't do it till a little later in the call, so don't freak out. However, if you have it, please open it up and be ready to be able to modify it. And the last thing we're going to talk about is some very important elements of an incident response plan as a provider of CMMC services. So please hang on to the end. If you don't know who I am, I'm Leia Shilobod. I'm the IT Princess of Power. One of my friends actually made me change my my title on LinkedIn to the Queen of CMMC, because he told me that I wasn't just the princess, I was the queen. I was trying to play on Star Wars because I thought it was cute. And actually, I really love what it is that we do. I'm very mission driven in order to secure the defense industrial base and all of our clients. To that end, I've authored a book, Cyber Warfare, was involved in this fantastic cybercrime documentary that premiered in LA last May. Pursued my CISM, which was awesome. If you are thinking about pursuing a certification, I do recommend it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm also a CCP candidate. We have a test, woohoo! So I'll be able to be an official CCP soon. And I'm also the author of the IT Documentation Toolkit. A quick disclaimer for everyone. You are getting a copy of that incident response plan that's directly from the CMMC IT Documentation Toolkit. It is what we actively use for all clients. Now, you can't just get this copy, jump off the line, and be like, haha, all I have to do is just put a company's logo on the cover page and then click Find Replace, and then put the company's name on it. In fact, you can't do that with any template. So that's just not ever a good practice, because every single company that you work with is going to be a little different from culture to business processes. So it's important that you read anything that you get. If it's a template, you're clear about what it means and why the information is in there. and that you are actually modifying it actively alongside your client so they understand too the content of the plans or policies or whatever it is that you're writing for them. And finally, never test an IRP on a real incident. Always make sure to test your plans in tabletop exercises. So like anything, it's not okay to just, write a plan or a procedure or a policy and then put it on the shelf and then allow it to gather dust. And this is particularly important when it comes to an incident response plan. You do not want to practice responding to an incident on a live incident. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today too. Let's just cover the incident response requirements for CMMC. And first, I'm going to share a couple of thoughts with you. It's possible you share all the same thoughts that I do. The first is that there are 3 practices in the incident response domain. They're all level 2 practices, which I thought was really interesting. Maybe you did too, because I kind of think that everybody needs this capability of being able to respond to incidents, even if you don't require CMMC compliance, and certainly if we want to secure the defense industrial base. But, that's just, so I really feel that it doesn't matter who you're supporting, that everyone should have an incident response plan, and recommend that if you are working with any clients at level 1, that you still also implement this with them. The objectives that you need to meet under those 3 practices include handling, reporting, and testing. And we're going to talk about all of those today. There's also requirements for documentation as well as regular activities. Let's, I know that you've all probably read the CMMC self-assessment guide at level 2, cover to back 100 times, right? Well, I have at least. And I still don't get tired of reading it, swear to God. But let's go ahead and dive into those 3 requirements really quickly so that we can refresh our memories if maybe we haven't read it in a little bit. All right, so the first practice is incident handling. And that states that you need to establish an operational incident handling capability for organizational systems that includes preparation, detection, analysis, containment, recovery, and user response activities. And in order to meet this practice, the AOs include that the capability is established. It includes preparation, it includes detection, it includes analysis, containment, recovery, and user response activities, which is what it just said above. But you have to determine that all of those things are indeed in there. And the IRP that we are going to work on today, if you follow it properly and modify it properly, will include that. The second is incident reporting. You have to track, document, and report incidents, designated officials and/or authorities, both internal and external to the organization. And then the AOs on that are to ensure that they're tracked, they're documented, who they are reported to is identified, as well as organizational authorities, as well as organizational officials, and assure that somehow you're showing that they are notified if you have an incident, and that and we're going to see how all of these elements are included in the incident response plan you've been provided. And the last one is testing, testing the organizational incident response capability. And we're going to talk today about an easy way to be able to do this that's still impactful and is also included in the plan. All right, 3 quick things about incident response I wanted to share with you. Hopefully you all know this, but in case, here's some blinding flashes of the obvious. First, keep an offline copy of your IRP. That's important because sometimes if your system is compromised and all of it happens to be encrypted, that digital location may also be encrypted and therefore your IRP not accessible and you're flying blind. So assure that you have an offline copy of that IRP. Keep your and advise your clients to keep the cyber liability insurance limit information off accessible systems. So it's fine to have a digital copy on an offline network attached storage device or other kind of USB, but keep this off of your regular systems, your regular file share, SharePoint, whatever it is that you're using to store your data. Please advise your clients of the same. We know that one of the tactics that malicious actors use when they gain access to networks is to do things like look at the limits for the cyber insurance, that they know how to set the ransom and they have a really high confidence level that it will be paid. So please assure to keep that off of your physical systems. And finally, the first call during a major incident needs to be to the insurance company. And that's why it's important to assure that if you are supporting a client in any capacity, and also when you are giving them, when you're walking through this incident response plan with them, when you review it over time, and when you do tabletop exercises, it's important that you are underscoring that the first call they need to make after, obviously you need to know about that there has been an incident, but they need to contact the insurance company first. What we're finding is that many of these insurance companies actually, okay, hang on a second. So many of the insurance companies, when you answer that question, Ron, many of these insurance companies have a specific process that you have to go through. And they may even ask you to, they'll give you specific instructions on how to follow things. They may bring in their own forensic people. And sometimes they require that those systems are offline and inaccessible for a time, which is also something you have to discuss as a continuity plan with your client before this actually happens. But there are actions that MSPs have taken on networks that were the company, they already had been covered by insurance, but the MSP took action to try to fix the problem and recover the client without talking to the insurance company and voided the actual policy. So it is important. So that should answer your question then, Ron. Like the first call before internal IT or IR head, of course, internally, you need to know internally that it's happening before, because and frankly, they're going to do that before they call the insurance company. And if internal IT or IR head is not aware that there's an incident, then there's I would think there'd have to be a really huge problem, because we're like watching our systems like all of the time. And if you don't see that something is up and then somebody actually calls the insurance company, and not so many people are actually going to have access to that. I would think that everyone on the incident response team would have access to know who the insurance company is. We're going to get to that when we go through the incident response plan. All right, so let's go ahead, guys. Let's jump into the incident response plan together. All right, I'm going to bring it up over here. Whoops, not like that, like this. And I'm going to change the view so we can all see it a little better. All right, so in this particular document, anywhere you see this field, if you close the document and you right click on the document and go into properties, you're actually able to go to the document properties and change the company name here, and then that will populate the fields that are like this throughout the document. Also, please note that this is labeled confidential, and that actually aligns with the information control and flow plan, which is also in the toolkit. And you need something like that to talk about your approach to how you're categorizing different kinds of information that the company holds, especially controlled information like CUI, and how it's allowed to be handled, stored, destroyed, etc. And confidential is one of the labels that we say is affixed to certain kinds of data. So that's why you see confidential here. So you want to think about that as you're also offering your documentation. All right, let's out down here. Make sure that whenever you are creating plans and policies, if you have a plan, a policy version history, and that you're updating this as you're making changes to your plan or to your document. It's unlikely that you're going to change this section right here where it says plan, mission, and objective. Assessors are looking for your plans or your policies to have a mission and or objective. So that's why the section is here, kind of define what is the purpose of this plan and what is it trying to achieve. It is written here to note that it is in alignment with CMMC NIST 100-171 and the 7012 clause of DFARS. And then we take the exact definition of cyber incident from that document, and that's the one we're going to run with because that's how they've indicated it's how we're supposed to define it. So I can take them through the use of computer networks that result in a compromise or an actual or potentially adverse effect on the company's information system or the information system residing therein. Now, why is this important? This is important because I don't know how many of you are involved with, incident response and a SAC and, like that kind of end of cybersecurity. But I know tons of people who are, including, and I had a really interesting conversation with the CEO of Blackpoint Cyber, John Murchison, who said, we were talking about, he came to one of our calls, and we were talking about how, like, the way that they define an incident and the way that we define an incident are different. Because an incident for them means that something has been compromised and it's like a big deal where systems are down. And we're saying that it results in a compromise or potentially adverse effect. So of an actual or potentially adverse effect, which is different because he felt like that was casting a wider net. And that's important in the documentation piece and side of things as we continue through this plan. It also indicates how often it's going to be reviewed and updated, which is important and assessors are looking for. This also means that you need some kind of mechanism to ensure it happens at least once a year. So put a mental note that if you need to figure out how you do that. What we do and what the toolkit provides is a risk management plan that and the risk management process and the risk assessment process is your trigger to do that during certain times of the year. Okay, so IRP scope, the three objectives of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, nothing is new there. And then a roles and responsibility matrix. You're going to want to have an R&R matrix for all of your plans and for all of your procedures. All of your plans and all of your policies. And this one we've already filled out both the roles and the responsibilities for what we've identified here as necessary for your IR team. So if you feel that there need to be additional roles, then certainly add those. These seem to work really well for us. And then also recognize that it's possible you can have more than one people in this box. Executive management might be a couple of people, so my human resources. And for DoD reporting certificate holder, that would be anyone that has the high confidence certificate, the ECA cert from IdenTrust or one of those providers who actually is capable of logging into DivNet in order to report an incident. We recommend that you have 2 people who have this kind of capability because of the timeline that you have to report. That way, if somebody is on vacation in the middle of the Caribbean and does not have access to, their fob or computer, that you can still meet that timeline. So we recommend at least 2 individuals have this capability. We also include human resources and a human resources role on the R&R. This is oftentimes looked over both by your clients and a lot of my IT friends, because oftentimes you're just thinking about, well, what do we do to respond and stop? not what do we do for damage control internally and externally. So not only do you have to assure that somebody in that, maybe it's not human resources, maybe it's communications, maybe it's marketing, I don't know what you want to call it, but somebody needs to be in a role of doing the right kind of messaging for what happens when you have an incident. So let's see. Let me see. Recently, if you are an MSP and you're on this call, you probably heard something about the stuff that was happening with Kaseya last year, and then IT Glue this year. The Kaseya VSA had a vulnerability, and there was a compromise last year. And this year, IT Glue was found to have some vulnerabilities potentially compromised. And the messaging that was going out from Kaseya, if it didn't give you warm and fuzzies, then think perhaps about what that would look like if it was you or your client that had to communicate out that there had been a compromise or a potential compromise. This key is really, this role right here is huge. It is huge because you will be compromised. We all know that. We just don't know when, and we don't know how bad. And when you are compromised, the way that you respond to it is going to make all the difference to make you look like a hero or make you look like you don't got your shit together. You don't have to swear at your clients the way that I just did and drop that SHIT word, but just make sure that you're emphatic that gets filled. Okay, next section, straightforward, you probably won't change it. Event and incident, defining the difference between the two. And then types of incidents are also included in here to help give people an idea about what types of things are incidents. If you'd like to add to this list, certainly do that. Some important things to call out is data spills, because those of us that work in this actively get asked by clients all of the time, what happens if somebody sends me CUI and they do it through an unapproved or unencrypted method? I tell them that's an incident, it's a data spill, and you have to treat it like an incident. You need to process or how you're going to treat it and or report it. So that needs to stay on here. You need to make sure that you're explaining that to your clients, how that's going to be handled. We also added a security support structure configuration modification. So in our organization, and for all of us, if we are doing CMMC work, change management is a requirement. And we require in our organization, especially because we handle so many different clients, that if anyone is modifying any of the security support structure, which would be something that's going to be like an SPA, classified as an SPA as a CMMC asset, that it needs to go through the change management process and at least be documented. So if anyone in my organization, any of the internal IT that we support, if they are modifying security support structure, any SPAs, and it has not, either if it's a change that has not been approved, it needs to be approved, or if something was changed and there was no documentation to that effect, then we declare that an incident, because there are too many things that you can change here that's going to blow open a wide hole. Also, that an unauthorized change of the security support structure is also an indicator of compromise. So it's something you need to pay attention to. That's why it's there. All right, I haven't gotten any questions yet. So either you all are like, I know all of this, keep going faster, or I'm blowing your socks off. I'm going to say it's number 2. That's what I'm going to say. All right, this next section you're all very familiar with, and that's going to be the 6 phases of incident response, which are all called out as requirements inside of the objectives. So they're all defined here. You can change, like I've seen a couple of these, like called something different. You can change those words, doesn't really matter. All right, now we get to the next section, which is really key. I don't see this in a lot of response plans, but as far as I'm concerned, I think we have plans that are very can be used and are very relevant. So we went ahead and included tabletop exercises inside of our plan. The tabletop exercises that are included below here are these incident handling scenarios right here. And the way that you we recommend you can do two kinds of tabletop exercises, right? Those of you that are on the call are maybe envisioning a bunch of people sitting around a table, red team, blue team, or you've got, people with their laptops and they don't know what's going to happen. And let's talk here. Oh, something happened. Let's see how everybody's going to react. Now, certainly there is a time and a place for that. And perhaps you do that internally in your company with technical people. But when you are doing this with your client, especially when you have some C-suite people in the room, what I recommend you do in the interest of time, as well as the interest of impact, is that your tabletop exercises, thank you, Mike. It is awesome. Mike Moran says, thank you for the awesome tabletop exercises examples. This is great. It is, trust me. Doing tabletops with your clients is so impactful. All you have to do is make sure that we do this with each single one of our risk management meetings that we have with the client. We have, most of them are quarterly. And we make sure that we include tabletop exercises as one of the items that we are going to do with them. We send them, so what's not included, I didn't give you, but you can certainly make it up, or you can, buy the toolkit and you get it, is a incident response worksheet. And that's provided to the client in advance before the meeting. We pull one of the examples from here, make it relevant for them. They're prepared to discuss it at the meeting. That's the expectation. You have reviewed the scenario and you're ready to talk through it, right? So one of the things that we do, we make sure they have all of these questions right here, and then we grab one of these scenarios. Okay, and like some of them don't make sense, right? Like for the client, right? So if I gave, let's see, compromised database server. Maybe this client doesn't have a database server, but maybe they have a QuickBooks company file, right, on one of their servers. So we changed this to make it relevant to the client so they can actually put themselves in this place. Why? Because people learn through storytelling, and you want to make it relevant and put them, okay, I'm in the situation where my QuickBooks company file was compromised, or the whole server was encrypted and the company file was on there, or whatever it happens to be. So we usually just tweak it a little, send it to the client ahead of time, and then discuss these things. And then we capture, while we're discussing it live, we capture the discussion, and then that's your evidence that you are testing the plan, right? Brilliant. And here, how about this for pro tip? Select a scenario here about something that's going to help you have leading questions about something that they won't accept advice about, or maybe they don't understand what the impact of XYZ, or like a server that you have to replace, a firewall that needs to be updated. Select one of the scenarios that would indicate what would happen if to continue on this path. And then they will convince themselves that that's what they have to do. They have to listen to you and do that thing. I'm telling you guys, it works. And you get credit for what you're supposed to do for CMMC. How about that? Also included in here is a sample of what's on the incident response worksheet, right? So like, let's say that you actually have an incident and you need to do the documentation for that incident. Included in the toolkit, and you can create one for yourself if you'd like to, is an incident response worksheet that includes what the incident was, like kind of in narrative format. Once the incident was, who reported it, what were some of the overall actions that were taken, what was the communication that went out to the client, or the client set out on behalf of the client to customer, to whomever. And included in that is also this worksheet right here, because a lot of this information is going to be what your client is going to have to input into the DivNet portal if it's a reportable incident. And they're going to be pretty stressed out, and you're really not going to want to sit with them when they do this. So this helps because you can fill in most of this for them ahead of time. Maybe you don't know their DUNS number or their cage code. That's okay. They know those things and they can find them. But then most of this information is already ready for them, and it'll be a simple copy paste when they need to actually report an incident. So That's why this is also in the plan. The next section is going to be your incident response procedures. As you can see, these are very high level procedures that are in the plan. Question, can we tweak this for Canadian law? Absolutely. Okay, so everything in the toolkit is definitely focused on America and American law. I did work with a prime contractor who has, I'm so sorry, I'm jumping all around. I worked with a prime contractor who is based in the UK, but they primarily are working with DoD here in the US. Some of the policies and the plans, we had to also comply with GDPR, so we had to make some changes. So please definitely consider, if you're not in America, then consider what you have to speak in the policies or plans for your particular country, and any kinds of requirements that you have there for compliance as well. Good question, anonymous attendee. Okay, so in this section right here, where you see the procedures, you will see that all of these are short, and that they are not like you really, I wouldn't necessarily, you're going to give this to your internal team and say, this is exactly what we're going to do. These are very high level respond, recover, and best practices in recovery that you need to modify, first of all, to reflect what your actual practice is for responding. But this is something that is going to be a shared document, not just an IT document. So the C-suite has to be able to look at this and say, I understand what it is you're supposed to do. And perhaps things such as, like right here, follow the respond to malware virus infection procedure. Perhaps you just call out procedures that the IT team needs to follow, and that's in a different document, so that this document doesn't like completely blow up and have a lot of information that's not relevant to the people that are reading it. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes? Good. All right. So again, like you have to actually read this and make sure this is actually how you would respond to incidents. Best practices in recovery, finding the tactics, techniques, and procedures, and then it also mentions that you need to report the incident within 72 hours if it is indeed a reportable incident. And for those of us, it's a quick reminder, if CUI was compromised, or if it's possible that CUI was compromised from this incident, then it needs to be reported. And then people say, well, what are ways that it wouldn't need to be reported? Well, if you have an enclave that is completely physically separated, and that's where your CUI is, and the regular network was the one that was compromised, and there's like absolutely no way, there's like no way at all, like even like you would have, there's no possible way that they could get over into this enclave, then that's not reportable, because there's no way the CUI could have been compromised then. So you have to really think about whether or not it should be reported, because if you report an incident that CUI was compromised, then there's a lot of things that kicks off, and you do not want to be the one that said, yes, definitely report this incident, and then they've got all these three-letter organizations crawling all over them, and you didn't really need to do that. And then we also recommend reporting to the IC3. The Internet Crime Complaint Center typically doesn't take any action at all unless there's like a loss of at least $50,000 that could have gone up. However, if we do that, then we provide the FBI good data that they can use to correlate oftentimes larger operations that they are doing investigations on, so it does help the cause. And ransomware incidents incurring losses over 50,000 to be reported to the FBI. We tell clients that up front so they understand the FBI doesn't care if you lose less than 50,000, they really don't care. So it's like you can definitely let them know, but you should not expect a response. You're going to want to go through all of these then, and then modify them, each one of these procedures, to exactly how you would do it from a high level, including changing anything that's in here. And one of the things that's important here that is not only making sure that the mechanism of communication during an incident is clear to everybody on the incident response team, but you're also making sure that you're talking about that in tabletop exercises. Here's an example. During one of our tabletops, where I didn't have the plan in front of them. We were doing the tabletop. It was actually helpful because then you get to see like how they're actually thinking. And I said, okay, so it was like the server had gotten compromised and it was completely encrypted. And I said, so what do you do? And of course, you know, the CEO says, oh, well, we call you. And no, I'm sorry, they didn't say that. He said, well, we'll email you. I'll send you an email. And I said, okay, so first, no. And second, no. So don't email me, no, because if your email could also be compromised. So we need an alternate mechanism to assure that you're contacting me. And the second no is that you have to recognize that there are other things that you have to do in an incident. You can't just like, there's not like, you know, the easy button where you just call Leia and all these things get fixed. That you also have to know that there are actions you need to take and be aware and involved in this process as well. So mechanism of communication, super important that you decide what that is going to be with your incident response team. All right, going through all of these. Data compromise, data spill, very important to review this process so that they know what they need to do when they receive, because it will happen. They'll receive CUI in an unapproved fashion. And then finally, at the very bottom, we have our list of everyone who is on the incident response team so that this is handy and available at that time, and they don't have to go look for some of these numbers, especially legal and insurance. That's really huge because you're going to want those handy. And it might also uncover things like we don't have insurance, which is really important to know, or they're not sure who they would use for legal counsel in the event of an incident. And then that's a great conversation starter to help them understand who is important to have in this role for legal. Okay. Any other questions about the plan? Right. All right. So other documentation, we covered some of that already. You have to make sure that you have some kind of a template for an incident response report. That's going to detail the incident, how it was responded to, remediated, and recommendations for changes to avoid a recurrence. And then after you've done that, you're going to attach that to your ticket so the client has a copy of that. And also then it has all the information about how you responded to the incident in your records inside of your ticketing tool. Additionally, we actually have a code for incidents too, so we tag tickets as incident. That way, we're able to pull a list every quarter to determine how many incidents we had that quarter. Then that report should also be attached to the DivNet when, or if I should say, your client has to report it. You also need to make sure that you have some kind of tabletop exercise worksheet template available too, so that you can easily record your tabletop notes. And we recommend that after you've done that with the client, store it in your GRC tool or wherever you collect evidence. I highly recommend that if you do this work, that you use some kind of a GRC tool. It really makes it so much easier to be able to do this work if you have a tool as opposed to just doing it with spreadsheets. I did it with spreadsheets, and now I use FutureFeed at futurefeed.co. Can't say enough good things about that tool, so highly recommend it. All right, so here's the important stuff that you need to know. First, as a provider, you need an IRP for your own company. I know, guys, like we preach this stuff to everybody, and yet sometimes the cobbler's children have no shoes, and so you don't have a fully built out IRP. The important thing to think about, though, is that you can't just use the template that I gave you and put your name on it. Why? Because you have to detail on there not just how you respond to your own incidents, but how you're going to respond to client incidents too, because both of those elements need to be detailed in your plan and your team trained on those two kinds of things. We're different in that way. We respond to internal incidents as well as client incidents. So make sure that you write an IRP for your own company, and I want you to schedule internal tabletops to test that plan, and make sure that you've given yourself a deadline to actually get it done. Whether you make an appointment with yourself in your calendar and you're like, and that's called write my company IRP, and then schedule time to do tabletops with your team, whether you defer that to someone else so that they are the ones that are going to go and schedule that time or prep for it or whatever, but you need to assure that this is in the schedule, or all kinds of other important things will take priority and you will never get to this. All right, so what do I do now? So we're going to have some more sessions to help you learn more about managing clients with CMMC, meet CMMC compliance. The next one is going to be next week, how to implement risk management for your compliance clients. Then we're actually going to, on the 22nd, it'll be a special Turkey Day session where we talk about how to stay the course of the CMMC marathon. Woohoo! I mean, there's no marathon like a CMMC marathon. Changes, confusion, misinformation. It's so much fun. So we're going to talk about how to stay the course and keep yourself sane, as well as make sure that your clients have a good feeling that you know what you're talking about and that you can get them through compliance. Continue to build your own systematic compliance program, or you can just join the rest of the cool kids in the CMMC Documentation Toolkit peer coaching and implementation program. We have a fast start program that's starting in December that will get you to quickly start to implement the toolkit internally in your company and with your clients. And then we have weekly peer calls where we are talking about a variety of issues, changes to CMMC, implementing CMMC, bringing subject matter experts to the call so that we can all learn, talking about the implementation, technical implementation, or other kinds of implementation of the program, and noodling over that to assure that we all have a high confidence that we are getting our clients compliant, keeping them compliant, and that they will pass their assessments. So I have a couple people asked about how you can get the toolkit. So you can go right now, like if you can't wait till December, then you can go and buy the toolkit right now at it.toolkit.com. It's it.toolkit.com. If you wait until December, then we're going to have a special offer for everybody that wants to wait till then. That will include the Fast Start program, which you don't have to do. But if you want a discount on the toolkit, then that's how you get the discount, is to get into the Fast Start program. You can email me directly if you want some. Here, let me put that in chat. Here we go, in the chat, guys. And you can email me directly if you or have any questions about the toolkit. Again, this is like the IT policies, plans, procedures, lists, bag of tricks, things of that nature to implement a compliance program. And we are continuously updating that. Here's a great, for instance, because of what happened with Kaseya and IT Glue, we recognize that we need to assure that we have vendor risk management as part of the program, not only for our clients, but also for us. So we did just put together some vendor risk management processes and added that to the toolkit too. as well as a spreadsheet that helps you to assess your own clients, and then you can give that, your own vendors, and you can give that to your clients and to be able to. So that's what it's all about, right? It's all about getting better and giving you more tools. Okay. So thank you all for coming today, and happy IRP writing.